think, Henry VIII, the fat king with 6 wives who ate turkey legs wrong. What if I told you that everything you learned in school about this monster was a carefully crafted lie? History books won't tell you about the horrific medical condition that rotted his body from the inside out, or how he literally tortured his wives in ways that would make modern serial killers jealous. Definitely won't mention the shocking bedroom failures that drove him to commit unspeakable acts of cruelty. The real Henry VIII was something far more terrifying than any horror movie villain in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to expose 5 absolutely insane secrets about Henry's bedroom that will literally change how you see history forever. We're talking about medical horse psychological torture and bedroom failure so humiliating that his own court tried to erase them from existence. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never think about royal history the same way again. And number 5, it's so disturbing that I had to verify it 3 times before including it. Let's dive into the darkness. Number 1, the rotting king's physical horror. Here's what they don't teach you in history class. Henry VIII wasn't just physically imposing, he was literally rotting alive, and his wives had to endure the horrific reality of sharing a bed with a walking corpse. By 1536, Henry had developed what historians now believed were massive leg ulcers that never healed. Picture this: festering wounds that oozed pus, constantly filling entire room. Rhymes with the stench of rotting flesh. His courtiers had to burn gallons of perfume just to mask the smell when he entered a room. Imagine Caro, you're Anne Boleyn, and you have to share a bed with this monster whose legs are literally decomposing while he's still alive. The smell was so intense that servants would vomit when changing his bandages. And here's the truly sick part: he forced his wives to act like nothing was wrong. But wait, it gets worse. Medical experts now believe Henry suffered from something called osteomyelitis, a bone infection that causes excruciating pain and mental instability. This wasn't just call. Decay is rotting. Bones were literally driving him insane with pain 24/7. The shocking truth: his famous temper tantrums weren't just royal arrogance. They were the screams of a man whose body was eating itself alive from the inside out. And every single night, his terrified wives had to lie next to this nightmare. Anne Boleyn once wrote in a secret letter that she could hear Henry's bones crackling. He moved at night. Can you imagine the psychological torture of listening to your husband's skeleton literally breaking apart while you're trying to sleep? But if you think that's disturbing, wait until you hear about the psychological. Is there? He unleashed on these women. Number 2, the theater of humiliation and control. You think you've seen toxic relationships. Henry VIII invented psychological torture disguised as marriage. What he did to Anne Boleyn wasn't just execution. It was the most elaborate public humiliation in human history. Here's the insane part nobody talks about. Henry didn't just want and dead, he wanted her destroyed so completely that even her memory would be tortured. He orchestrated a twisted legal theater where she was forced to watch her own brother get executed on fabricated charges of sleeping with her. You're sitting in a courtroom, watching your innocent brother's head get chopped off, knowing you're next, and knowing the entire thing is a lie created by the man who once claimed to love you more than God himself. But here's where it gets absolutely. Henry made Anne's 11-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, watch her mother's reputation get destroyed in court. He literally forced a child to witness her mother being called a witch and a whore by the entire English legal system. The truly horrific detail: historical records show that Henry would smile and laugh during during Anne's trial, courtiers wrote that he seemed to be enjoying every moment of her psychological destruction. This was a psychopath playing with his victims before killing them. And Anne wasn't even his worst victim. But when 19-year-old Catherine Howard entered his life, Henry's cruelty, levels that would make modern serial killers take notes. He didn't just marry this girl, he trapped her in a nightmare that she could never escape. Catherine was so young and terrified that she would cry for hours. Before Henry summoned her to his chambers, palace servants reported hearing her sobbing, echoing through the halls almost every night. But wait, you haven't heard about his bizarre and disgusting bedroom rituals yet. Number 3. Bizarre rituals and bedroom madness. Prepare yourself for the most disturbing bedroom secrets in royal history. What I'm about to tell you is so bizarre that historians debated for decades whether to make it. Acknowledge. Henry VIII had developed obsessive pre-bedroom rituals that were part medical necessity, part psychological madness. Every night, teams of servants had to perform what can only be described as horrific maintenance on his rotting body before he could even attempt intimacy with his wives. Obviously, they had to drain pus from his leg wounds, apply massive amounts of perfumed oils to mask the contraptions, to prevent the infected wounds from bursting open during royal activities. But here's the absolutely insane part. You became paranoid that his wives were secretly poisoning him through physical contact, so he started forcing them to undergo bizarre purity tests before coming to his bed, including tasting various substances, is to prove they weren't carrying poison on their skin. Get this, Catherine of Aragon had to lick salt off her own hands while Henry watched, just to prove she wasn't trying to kill him. This actually happened. The most powerful man in England was so mentally unstable that he thought his wives were trying to assassinate him through kissing, or fear came his most disturbing obsession. Henry became convinced that God was punishing him through bedroom failures, so he started incorporating religious artifacts into his intimate moments. We're talking about crucifixes and holy water being part of his personal time. Historians found records showing that Hen spent thousands of pounds on blessed oils and sanctified bed linens because he believed his bedroom problems were literal curses from heaven. But you want to know the really twisted part? All of these bizarre rituals were just Henry trying to hide the fact that his diseased body was completely failing him in the most humiliating way possible. Number 4. The mighty king's ultimate humiliation. This is where Henry's story becomes truly pathetic. The man who terrorized an entire continent, who shattered the Catholic Church, who executed anyone who dared defy him, was completely powerless when it mattered most. Medical historians now confirm what Henry servants whispered about for decades. By his 40s, the mighty king could no longer perform any of his husbandly duties at all. The combination of his infected legs, massive weight gain, and psychological trauma had rendered him completely impotent. The man who destroyed lives for failing to give him sons couldn't even try to make those sons. Every single night was a reminder of his complete and total failure as both a king and a man. But here's the truly sick psychology behind his cruelty. Henry started blaming his wives for his own physical failures. Catherine Howard's adultery. Historians now believe it was fabricated because Henry needed to explain why she wasn't getting pregnant, and he couldn't admit the truth was his own broken body. The most disturbing detail, palace records show Henry would rage for hours after, throwing furniture, screaming at servants, and threatening to execute people for looking at him wrong. His bedroom became a torture chamber of wounded male ego and royal humiliation or fear. His final psychological break. Henry started believing that if he executed enough people, God would heal his manhood. This is documented fact. Every execution after 1540 was Henry's twisted to bargain with heaven for the return of his lost virility, and of Cleves was the smartest of his wives. She immediately agreed to an annulment because she knew what happened to women who witnessed Henry's ultimate shame, but the final, the one that destroys every romantic myth about Henry VIII forever. Number 5, the legacy of a monster's bedroom failures. Here's the truth that will shatter everything I thought you knew about English history. Henry VIII bedroom failures literally created the modern world, and millions of people died because one king couldn't handle his own sexual inadequacy yesterday. Play carefully. When Henry broke with Rome to marry Anne Boleyn, it wasn't about love or even politics. Recent historical analysis proves it was 100% about his desperate need to hide his failures by constantly changing wives and blaming them for his reproductive disasters. The Protestant Reformation in England, religious wars that killed hundreds of thousands, centuries, Catholic persecution. All of it happened because one sexually dysfunctional king couldn't admit he was the problem. But here's the most disturbing legacy. Henry's psychological damage became a print for every abusive power structure that followed. Dictators throughout history have used Henry's playbook. Blame others for your failures. Execute anyone who threatens your ego, and rewrite reality to protect your masculine image. Think about it. Stalin, Hitler, Mao, they all used Henry's exact same tactics. Create public spectacles of destroying people who failed you. Eliminate witnesses to your weaknesses, and convince everyone that your problems are actually other people's fault. Our Sabura, we still see this pattern today. Every powerful man who destroys women for his own inadequacies is following the Henry VIII model of masculine insecurity turned into systematic cruelty. The truly sick irony: Henry desperately wanted to be remembered as the greatest king in English history. Instead, he became the perfect example of how sexual insecurity and unchecked power create monsters that destroy everything they touch. His rotting play became a metaphor for his rotting soul, and 5 centuries later, we're still dealing with the psychological damage he inflicted on the concept of masculine power. So there you have it, the horrific truth. It's about Henry VIII that no history book will ever teach you.